So once you have the pen assembled, you've got what looks like a pen. It could function as a pen, but it's going to be a little bit awkward to hold. So at this point, we got to do something to create some new part that doesn't exist as part of the kit, and that's the part that's going to kind of cover this space. So the brass fittings were never meant to be on the outside. They're actually going to be the interior lining of a part you're going to model, and we'll try to 3D print. So when I'm modeling these, what I would like to do is they need to fit securely on the brass fitting, and then to make this kind of flow seamlessly as a solid part, the shape needs to touch or come back to the same diameter as the tip, the ring, and the top. If it gets too much bigger than that, it's going to be a big step down. It's not going to look like a uniform product. Another thing to keep in mind, your pen clip has a little bit of a distance here. So if you do make this part too big, it's not going to fit the clip on it. And the clip is going to serve two purposes. One, so that it can clip onto like a pen or pocket or something like that. The other thing, and I've done this in the past, and I've let students not include the clip, but those pens are all off the table. So I'm going to require that clip. So these pens stay on the table, don't roll around, you have the clip. It's going to look like a nice product. But I'm going to start down here. So you're going to have two different models. You'll do one for the top and one for the bottom. The only difference is, and I'll let you figure out that once we do this one, you got to measure to figure out how to make it so that your piece still has contour but doesn't not fit on the clip. So you should measure and see how much clearance do you have, how much space you have. The pen clip can touch that component, can touch that shape, but if it's pushing on it, especially up here, I've had students, this clip gets bent out and it doesn't function anymore. But I'm just going to start with the handle part because you're going to have a bit more creativity there, a little bit less constraint, because you could go bigger if you wanted to. But I need to set up sort of guidelines for myself. So the inside needs to fit over that brass fitting, and the outside needs to fit. It needs to be kind of in contact with that, but it can do whatever it wants in the meantime. So what I have set up here is a guideline, but I'm going to walk through and make a new one. What this is I'm setting up a revolve. So the revolve is going to be, this is half of the thing that's going around that brass fitting. So this 0.133 here is half the diameter of the outside of the brass fitting. This 0.168 is half the diameter that we need to be back at for the ring top and bottom. The 2.038 is the height of the brass fitting. So I'm going to make a new one to sort of walk you through this. So I'm going to make a new 2D sketch. I'm going to be drawing, again, this is kind of half. So the first thing I'm drawing is actually going to be the tube, the hollow part. So 2.038 is the height of that. I hit tab to move to my other, dimension box, and now I'm going to try to pick the width. So you can always double check your brass fitting, but if I put this in the caliper, the brass fitting that is, I see it's 0.267. So if I measure that 0.267, I'll divide that by 2 because I need a hole that's that big. Also, because this is going to be needing to fit over it, I'm going to make it about 1 or 2 thousandths bigger so it has some room to fit. So maybe rather than 2.67, I'm going to do 2.68, 0.268 divided by 2. So now that hole is going to have some room to get in there. Whoops, that was the brass fitting. And we're going to have room to put the glue in there. So that is going to be the opening. That's the hole. Now from the same center, I'm going to go up. I want it to be 2.038. So if it's highlighted like that and you got it to the same height, you can just hit tab, or if you have to type it in, you can type it in and then hit tab, and that'll give us the width, which you can see on the top of my screen. Now the width for this, if you want to double check the measurement, I'm measuring the diameter of the pen tip, which I got at 0.333. So 0.333 is the 336. So 0.336 is the full width of the pen tip, which we want to come back down to so it smoothly transitions between sections. And I'll divide that by 2. So these are just guides, and you can do whatever you want. The rule, though, that you want to keep in mind, we can't go, we can touch this line, but we can't go past this line, because this part needs to be hollow. This in here needs to be hollow. So we'll use that line. So I'm just going to do an example, because you can use lines however you want to do whatever you want. I would try to keep it fairly small. You should use a caliper to figure out what's going to work for you, what's not going to work for you in terms of distancing. You can do, whoops, you do have to make sure it's a completed shape. So you want to make sure it snaps to the end of line, and then let me snap to the end of this this line here. So that's going to go because I got to come to there. And I want this, I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to move this. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to delete that. I want my line, I want my shape to come to that outer edge, sorry. So it needs to come to this outer edge because that's where it flows into the regular pen. So it needs to touch that corner, and it needs to touch the corner down here. Everything else doesn't really matter so much. But this is going to be hollow, this part's going to be solid, and then we'll revolve that and that. So I'll finish this sketch, and I'll revolve it. I want that. Oop, no, I don't want that, my bad. Because that's going to be the hollow part. I want that, and I want that. So I'm leaving this part unselected because that's going to be where the pen tube fits. And I'll select the axis, which will be that, and then that's the shape that I end up with. Now you can go through and try a bunch of different things, see what you like. We've got a smooth curve, we've got some angles. You can do some stuff with that. Something else that you can do, we don't want to touch that inner ring, but one thing that we could do to add some flair is we can create some negative shapes and cut those out. This doesn't need to be perfectly measured or anything because this is sort of a style. I'm going to create different shapes and I can cut those out, and I'll show in a minute what I mean. I'm going to do a circular array. I want to select that shape, that's the geometry, and I'm going to select the center here, center axis here. It's not going to let me do that, so I have to go back into sketch 2 and put a circle there. Okay, now I can go back and do it. If there's not a center point in your sketch that you're trying to do that with, whoops, it doesn't let you do that. Circular, so I want to do that. I'm going to go around that center point there. I'll pick, yep, so those look cool. Don't want to touch that middle bit, that would be bad. I can say okay. So now I can do an extrusion. Oops, finish the sketch. I can do an extrusion, I can pick all of these, but I'm going to select cut, and we want to go back all the way, something like that, and I can say okay. And there you go. So you can play around with adding and taking away grooves and ridges. The important thing to the way the pen's going to look, though, is that at again, these top and bottom parts, it goes down to that size, because if it doesn't, you're going to have issues of it not looking like a single product. So once you're done with these, you can save them and you can put them in your assembly drawing, and they should fit in very nicely. So I brought it into my assembly drawing, and I'm just going to try to mock it up in place. Again, you use the center lines to get it going, but you might have to use some offsets to get it to fit exactly where you want it to go. So what I found, and I'll mention in class, if you pick the constraint first, because we want this to be an insert, I want that, and I'm seeing that bottom ring highlighted, and I see that bottom ring highlighted. That's going to help it snap right into place on the first go, so I don't even have to use offsets. But that's going to give me a sense of what I think the pen's going to look like. And I gave it a color just to see what it would look like. So that's the first section. And then you will be creating the other section to whatever shape that you want it to be. And you can create this shape to whatever shape you want it to be. I would try to keep a theme, try to keep it like looking like it's the same product. You only get to use one color for 3D printing, so they have to be the same color. But that'll give you a visualization of what your final pen product will look like, and I'll have you do a few looks, a few variations, just to have you play around with different appearances. Anyways, that's all there is to it for creating your own handle. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.